Hello, I'm Weldon Oliver, and welcome to Oliver's Art. This session, we have the Oliver's Art anniversary party here at my place in downtown, Old Town on Maple Street. And we're going to paint a waterfall in celebration of my first year in Old Town. This kicks off our year where we do parties and special events. And for our first step, we're going to pick up our brush and get some white, like we normally do. And we're just going to go ahead and prime that canvas, putting a little white up here. I'm going to scumble it, that's a scrubbing motion, from top to bottom, smooth it out, and have a nice, smooth coat of well scrubbed in white, not too much paint. I'm now going to take my brush, get a little bit of white in it, and work down just a little bit of permanent rose. Let's have a look at that color. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful color. Permanent rose is very, very bright. It's a very strong color. It's going to give us that evening glow we need. I'm going to come down and get it not too pink, and then just a tiny smidge of purple beside it into that. So the color I have is a very beautiful pastel. And I'm going to take this color and starting right about the upper middle of the sky, I'm going to scrub it in to where I have something roughly the shape of a flattened basketball here in the middle of my canvas. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reach over and get a little bit of the purple and move it back into the rose I was using. So I have a spot that's kind of pastel. I'm slowly graduating from that bright rose light in the middle to something just a little more purple, just a little more shadow in it. And now I'm going to begin surrounding that a little bit. Obviously need a little more purple in it. Up on top, I'm going to bring it around and even down underneath. So I have a basic oval shape, a little more purple on the brush, tiny bit of red in it. Whoops. And I'm also going to bring it straight across where the water goes. Nothing too heavy yet. I'm just going to establish my map for where we're going to go with the light in the painting. I'm going to take the brush now and I'm just going to soften the edges. What we're going to do is make X strokes, like you see me waving my hand here. Take your time. And it just pulls the edges of the darker purple rose into the edge of the lighter, more pink rose. Just going to go around the circle, just smooth it out a little bit. We're going to come back and add clouds and everything to that. I just need to lose the edge and also out the top here. I'm just going to smooth the edge as it goes around the top and around the bottom. Slowly covering the canvas with just the colors of the daylight there. Nothing's perfect, nothing has to be exact. It just begins to soften the sky. I'm now going to reach down here and get a little bit more red on my brush. I don't have too awfully much of paint there, just a little bit, maybe a little dot of purple with it so it's not pure red. And I need to go back up here and I need to accent the shadows in the sky where the clouds go. And since my clouds kind of hang, see, they're going to hang in kind of a diagonal fashion, I'm just draping, if you will, some of this color in here. Looks like sweeps. We will be back and put some cloud lights on those. And the next thing I'm going to do is reach over here and get a little bit of purple in my brush. And on the corners, I'm going to accent shadows of my purple a little. And the sum total of that is the top of the sky always seems just a little bit darker than what goes on in the middle down by the horizon. So a little bit of red there in the middle, a little bit more purple worked in toward the top. And then I'm just going to use my brush to gently smooth that, settle it down a little bit. Gentle strokes. Smooth down the red in the middle of the sky, smooth down the purple toward the top. And I'm now ready to add my blue. And after we add the blue, then we'll be able to add our clouds. We're going to now go to the phthalo blue. And phthalo is very, very strong. I'm going to use this phthalo blue to accent my sky and my water. I'm going to get just a little bit of it on the brush and go right back up there in that purple red spot. That's going to help mix that blue. Going to dilute it a little bit. This helps keep it under control, plus the fact we're using a brush that already has other colors in it. Phthalo blue is very, very strong. I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to come up where I know my sky is darker toward the top, and I'm just going to make some accents. And then down in the water, there would be some. Again, not too much. Doesn't take too awfully much. Don't lose all that hard-earned work you did. I have an accent in the sky. I have rose purple in the water, plus I have blue, taking my time, and then I'm just going to take my brush, and with an X stroke, I'm just going to smooth it out so I can add clouds in a few moments. We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back. I'm going to get a little white on this fan brush. Just pull a little white down on the fan brush and scoop it up. And I need to begin putting in my cloud light in the sky. Toward the top of my sky, the clouds should seem larger and at a little bit of an angle. So I'm just going to pull a nice, bright, fluffy cloud across there. And I'm not going to try to be very exact about it. I'm just going to pull the white across. The white will blend into what I've worked so hard to put there. Maybe get a little more white. Maybe get another accent up toward the middle. And as I come down the middle of the sky, things get a little smaller. I'm just going to swish those clouds in there. As I come down to the middle, I don't want the paint to be very thick. Tap and smooth out the bottom edge of the clouds a little bit. In this painting, I'm going to be a little bit careful about that upper left-hand corner because I have a big tree going through there, and I don't want big globs of white. And that will probably be enough to get us started. I'm now going to take my fan brush and get something with a little white, a little purple, maybe a little bit of red in it, maybe a tiny bit of blue in it. A color that's darker than the sky. And I'm going to hold the brush up and down like this, and I'm going to begin with those background trees. And what is that? That's an up and down motion. Kind of a sweeping motion. What I'm beginning to put into the painting are those trees that stand up far away. Any pine tree, evergreen tree, especially a very tall fir tree, looks very straight and thin in the distance. So there go a few of those. They go across my painting. Just allow the brush hairs to bring them up. Now I reached over, I got a little bit more dark purple in my brush, And I'm going to add a couple of more for emphasis. Put them in between the ones I did before, so I have a couple of different shades of them. This creates the backdrop of the trees in the back. And now I'm going to very softly use my fan brush and just X across some of the bottoms of these. And as I do, they begin to blur a little bit. Sweep them up and down a little. I'm making the bottoms of the trees blur away, because that's what happens in the distance. Mist has a way of blurring the bottom of the trees away. There. Just a little bit of fog back there. I'm going to get a little white, mix it with the purple in my brush, wipe your brush out if there's too much purple. I'm coming out with a nice lavender pastel. It's very light. I need some light in these trees. What would I see if I were looking way back in the distance? I would see the sun glinting off of tree trunks, maybe pine needle clumps. It's an up and down on the upper 2/3 of the tree, hit or miss. It's not white, so it's not snow. It's just a little skylight on the edges, branches of trees. A little something to let the viewer see the distance back there. And after I've done that, I'm going to wipe out this fan brush again. And I'm pulling down a darker purple. And this time I'm reaching over and getting a little Terra Verte green, kind of a mistletoe color green, and a little bit of white to soften it up. The Terra Verte green is that mistletoe green mixed in with the purple. Scoop that up. This is going to give me my second row of trees that are closer. And I'm going to just put them in places. I'm going to start here by pressing off a tree trunk. Here's another one. One here. There's one. Perhaps one or two over here. One down there. That makes 6, and so in order to keep it an odd number, I have like about 7. They almost look like pipe cleaners there. I've simply placed them. Notice how I've got a space, not quite dead center in the painting. That's where the waterfall is going to go in just a moment. So I've got these trees across here. I'm scooping up a little more paint in my fan brush using the corner of the brush. Starting below the top, I'm just going to dance a fir. That's kind of a zigzag motion down the tree trunk. Not difficult at all. Terra Verte green, purple together. And another one, I'm going to dance another one as it comes down. I don't allow them to get too wide. The ragged edge of that fan brush emulates that tree very, very well. And we'll be right back. Welcome back. It's time to add a little bit more distance to our tree line there. Green and purple give me my distance. What that says to my eye is that I have now come just close enough that I can begin to see a hint of yellow. Therefore, I can begin to see a hint of green with all that purple shadow. I'm going to wipe out this fan brush and use it to blend the bottom of my trees a little bit. So I'm just going to wipe this brush off. And now I'm going to come up to the bottom of my trees. The first thing I'm going to do is just tap a little bit and see if I can't walk a little bit of that color out. That's called stippling. Kind of a pressing motion. A squishing motion, if you will. And I'm going to go ahead and use it. Just going to go ahead in here With whatever's on the brush, I'm just going to tap it. I'm going to lean down on this side. I'm going to lean down on that side. And I'm using that beautiful gray, purple, green in my brush to introduce a color of shadow down the hillside, which shall soon disappear into the mist as we add our waterfall. After I've stippled that soft color, I'm going to take a moment now and use gentle X strokes with the fan brush over the bottom of the trees a little bit, over my shadow areas a little bit. I'm just going to smooth all those brush marks a little to let them blend into the landscape a little more naturally. All right, I'm going to take my brush now, and I don't have a great deal in it. It's just stained. I don't have a lot of wet or globby paint in it, but there is some form of purple gray in it. I'm going to come up here where my waterfall is going to fall, which will be somewhere up here where these trees are. And I'm just going to smear it down a little bit here. Just bring it down like this. I have two reasons for mapping the waterfall that way. If there's anything in the way, I need to get it out of the way, like a tree or an extra piece of paint there. But also I need some form of shadow underneath the white of the waterfall I'm about to put there. Just like there would be rocks on a cliff behind a waterfall, I need something also. I'm going to wipe out my fan brush, which I have, and now I'm going to get a little white, thick white, on the end of it. And I'm going to place it right across where the waterfall goes, right there. And that white is pretty bubbly and pretty thick, just the way water would be as it comes over the edges of the rock, bounces a little bit, and then heads down the cliff. To pull my waterfall, I'm just going to stick my brush into the white I made softly and without interruption. Just let my hand fall down and drag it. It's a little bit like dragging a broom across the kitchen floor when you sweep. It doesn't have to be straight. Waterfalls do fall at angles. If I stick my brush in here, there it comes. The key is not to stop. Just let the brush do the work. Going to go back up and get a little bit more of the edge and the other edge. And my waterfall has drifted right down the hill, right out of the mountaintops up there, between the trees, down to the water. Ooh, very nice. I'm looking around at these. Remember, the more you brush it, the more it smears. You want those brush marks to hang there. We need something at the bottom of our waterfall, so I'm just going to get white on the brush, come down to here to where the water is, and I'm just going to splash a smile a little bit. And then a little bit of the foam goes back and forth. Putting a little more white on the brush, I'm then going to just roll some mist up the side. So that is kind of a milky, foggy look as it goes partly up the hill on the sides of the waterfall. One gentle sweep through the water to smooth it out. And I have now mapped the waterfall. Now that I have my waterfall mapped in, I need to enclose it as nature so often does. Not every waterfall falls just straightly down a cliff without anything on it. A few do. Some waterfalls are closed in with trees, ferns, every kind of foliage there is. I need something dark that's going to go in front. So again, I'm pulling purple in the brush and a little more of that Terra Verte green. Stir it up. And just a little white just a little white to kind of soften it there. I'm not going to worry about the fact that it's going to cost me a little bit of my waterfall to overlap these trees. That would be typical. Where do they go? Well, there should be something up here on the side of one and maybe there. They stand up almost like antennas. I had to darken my paint a little more. And when I bring these down like this, some of the branches just hang on the side, and that's fine. So now I can clearly see how trees more or less embrace that waterfall. They just hang a little bit, and I like that. It works very well. I'm going to go ahead and take the dark that's in my brush and just run some lines across my water. That would be shadow there. Just cleaning the brush out. And after that, I'm going to get a little bit of white in my brush, stir it up into a light color. And just on the edges of some of the branches, I'm going to put a little bit of this light color. Just enough so that people can see, the viewer can see that there's a little bit of sunlight on the tree limbs, especially where it's wet. I'm going to take a little Terra Verte green in my brush, reach over and get a little yellow, mix into that, maybe a little white, tiny bit of black. I'm going to finish creating my middle distance by stippling in what appears to be a cascade of trees in this area. As I come down, I leave the bottom edge with its misty, glowing lavender. That looks consistent with waterfall areas. I need a little more paint for the other side. This motion I'm using kind of gives the viewer the feeling of a bunch of trees or trees that are bunched together. And I will need some of that color in the water. What we're really doing is bringing yellow forward. Now I'm going to take a knife and scratch the verticals and put in the branch marks. Back to my 1-inch brush, a little white, a little yellow. I'm going to create a little highlight on these trees. Again, I don't want to lose all the color I had. Just enough that you can imagine you see it. And that concludes the middle distance of our beautiful painting and our first session. Be sure to tune in for the remainder of our painting where we put in the beautiful foreground and the front tree. And I'm Weldon Oliver. Come and see me down at Oliver's Art in Old Town Florence. I will see you next time when we finish our picture. Welcome to Oliver's Art. This is the second session of our Misty Waterfall. In this session, we're going to put in our foreground. And I'm going to start by mixing Viridian Green and Ivory Black together to get a very strong black-green on the fan brush. I'm going to scoop a little bit of that green-black up. I'm going to put my foreground about 2 inches above the tape here. Just cut it right across like this. And I know how much water is left now. I've saved a certain amount of my water. I'm going to go ahead and get more black and green together and just kind of fill that in. This is going to give me the value I need to build all the beautiful lights that go in the front. Fan brush is very quick for this. After I've laid in my foreground color, I'm going to take a moment now to introduce the grass, bushes, and things that normally accompany any hillside. Tapping the fan brush up gives those overhanging thickets that you see anywhere near waterways. Flipping the brush gives me a little grass. I have a very natural looking water area. I need the dark to have a place to put the lights. So after I've introduced the foreground, I'm now going to reach over and pick up a little yellow on my brush, stir it by itself and add a little bit of white to it. The viridian and the black in my brush give me a very rich yellow-green. I need that color in order to stand on top of what I just did. And I introduce it by tapping motions, sometimes vertical, sometimes horizontal. More yellow, more white. Each time I mix white and yellow, the brush changes as the color changes. A few of these go up. A lot of them lay down, as grass does in areas. I'm squishing that color in there with a stippling motion, a pressing motion. And there is my first layer of the foreground, something to bring the image forward. Next, I'm going to take my liner brush. That's called a script liner brush. It's very thin. I'm going to roll it in some Oliver's Art medium and come over to my black and rub it until I have a nice little puddle of thin, wet, dark black paint. I'm going to work up a pretty good sized puddle of it here, just get some going. I'm going to pull some trees in the foreground. I'm going to start over here on this side by just using the brush to pull straight up. If I have to twist it a little, that's fine by me. Right up into the sky. Notice how I use the tip of the brush when I stop to get a fine point to it. The tip of the brush will give you that. Well, there's the first tree, and I think I'll bring the second one up like this. And maybe he's not quite as tall as the first one. The viewer can now begin to see distance just by the power of a vertical item that's got good contrast. I'm going to get a little more paint, though I need to widen the trunks of these trees, especially at the bottom. It might be helpful to know that I usually get the trunk of my tree maybe 3 brush widths wide, and as I go up the tree I'm 2 brush widths wide. That sort of helps balance things out a little bit. A couple of brush widths wide going up the tree, and then add another one at the bottom where the trunk is. The root area of a tree, of course, is going to be larger. For branches, I'm going to put the tip of the brush in the trunk of the tree and pull out. Using the tip of the brush, I just bring small tips to my branches. Not every branch goes up. Some go straight, some go down, some split. A few of them may even cross a little bit. We're using branches of trees to overlap in our painting. As these overlap that light green in the background, you begin to imagine you see distance in the painting. The trunk of the tree, I can even bring a few small suckers up. And then, wiping the brush, pick up a little bit of white, and I'm going to just tap it down part of the edge on the right hand side. Of my trees. Nothing too exact. And using my fan brush, I'm just going to gently flick them a little bit sideways across the tree, a little more than halfway. Again, it's only a suggestion of detail, and that is going to put in the trunks of our tree before we add our foliage. I'm going to add my first layer of color to these trees by getting a little white in my fan brush after I wiped it out, pulling down a little of this vermilion orange, red. Vermilion is a very useful mixing red-orange. I've picked up a little bit of it in my fan brush, and I'm just going to start crossing areas where branches hang out. Sometimes across the tree trunk. As I do it, I notice that the color mixes with the tree trunk color. Now I'm going to pick up a little yellow and mix into that red-orange and get a little bit more as I come across, a little bolder now, a little bigger. And I have these falling tree shapes that autumn gives us. A few on the ground where leaves go, scattered out a bit, a little more yellow and white. I have a very dirty brush now. And just a sprinkling or two among the red areas of these leaves. And there's some gray color happening on these two trees that go back into my foreground a little bit. Texture is what makes them work. In other words, the paint's a little bit thick. And we'll be right back. I have my liner brush again that I've wiped out, and I'm going to get a little bit more of the Oliver's Art medium, get some more black in it, and this time I don't want the paint too thin. I need some good, thick black paint, and I'm going to come down here in the foreground and start pulling that great big tree right out to the tape on the top of the canvas. And it's just not big enough, so I'm going to do it again. Like the song says, side by side, here I go. As a matter of fact, I think I need to do about 3 of these guys. So I got a great, big, large, dark tree trunk coming out the top, and you see how I'm not afraid to introduce the color. I'm just bringing it up and down. Very large amounts of black paint on my brush. If you're trying to keep your tree trunk straight, I challenge you to go out in nature and have a look for yourself. The pines and firs have a right to be straight, but all other trees are out there taking their chances, especially deciduous trees. So I have a very pronounced foreground subject here. That's a very pronounced piece. I'm just going to take this moment and go ahead while I have the chance and pull a large, high limb that goes out across there. I'm going to let it cross my waterfall a little bit, have another one go out the side, maybe a few more this way, out the top. They cross the sky a little, they come down. This is a tree that grows to find the light. With that tree now in place, no foliage as yet, I'm going to pick up the fan brush, wipe it off, get a little bit of white on the edge, and come up the trunk side near the light, tap that white off, and lightly, quickly flick it back across. I think perhaps a little bit more. I'm going to add a little bit to the bottom and make it just a little bit brighter. Again, the viewer is to see all of this up close. There, and my tree is getting ready for the next stage. You may have noticed that before we began this session, I taped off the border. That is, before we put the background on. And now that I have my foreground subject in, I'm going to take this time to peel off some of the border tape. And you can just see what a nice beginning I have. A gorgeous, gorgeous border around the edge of my painting. I'm going to take my liner brush first with some good dark on it, and I'm going to bring my limbs right out the edge of the borders. And I rather enjoy taking the tops of my trees right out the top of the picture as well. So I'm simply continuing what I've started, and also down below. I'm going to drag right off the bottom edge. I'm going to drag a little of this dark right down the bottom edge of my painting, right out the back side of the tree there. I'm scumbling with the fan brush. That's a scribbling motion that just works very well. I'll work it right back up inside my foreground, bring it back up here, out the corner. This is going to give me the dark I need to put the lights on. And the first light is that vermilion, red-orange, plenty of Oliver's Art medium to loosen it up, tiny bit of white to loosen it up, scoop it up. This beautiful tree has very beautiful, textured, thick areas of fall colors. And I go ahead and bring some of that color right down here, along the bottom, around the tree as it walks back inside. Notice how it never totally covers up the ground. It merely introduces itself everywhere the ground is. I'm going to get a little more of that. And continue laying down this base red-orange that goes in my tree leaves in this fall setting. Don't hesitate to bring some of that color across the trunk. It is needed. Trails out down below, many broken edges to fall leaves. Now I need to bring a little light into it. I'm going to reach over and pick up cadmium orange. Cadmium orange is very bright, but it does not mix with any great strength. I'm simply going to introduce it as a light. It will mix right in with the colors that are already there. I'm picking it up pure on the canvas, and I'm just joining it with what's already there on the ground, on the leaves. Remember, broken edges have a great deal to do with it. Even a little cadmium orange back inside the first trees we made. But again, not as much. They're a little further back. Don't overdo it. Just join it a little bit. I have a fall scene approaching. Taking a moment to wipe out that fan brush. Last, I need that sunlight highlight. I'm picking up white and I'm pulling down yellow. And I'm going to scoop up a little cadmium orange to join that. Makes a very distinct, not quite yellow, not quite orange color that is found so often in the dying leaves that fall. Not yellow, not orange, because they've turned. But they're beautiful just the same. Again, the paint is a bit thick, and I like that. Broken edges indicate how the limbs are losing those leaves. As the leaves die, slowly float away. And on the ground, I would see some of that same color tapped into the dark areas where the leaves cover the grass, join some of the root areas. There is my fall scene. Notice the three-dimensionality. I'm Weldon Oliver. Thank you for joining me at Oliver's Art.
Now, are we,
I'll do what you do.
Thank you for joining Oliver's Art, first year anniversary in Old Town Florence.